Throughout the 15 and 1600s, absolutism became dominant through much of Europe and parts of Asia. The people who ran these civilizations were called monarchs, and they had full and complete power, and very pretentious titles. The ones you'll absolutely want to know are Akbar the Great from India, Louis XIV of France, also known as Louis the Great, and finally Peter, you guessed it, the Great, from Russia. Let's start with India, where Akbar the Great was ruler of the Mughal Empire. How great was he? Well, Akbar literally translates into the Great. So you could just call him the Great, or Akbar the Repetitive. Instead, though, you might remember him as Akbar the Religiously Tolerant, because he really was. This is a big deal, since most absolute monarchs claim that they ruled because of divine right. This was the belief that they had been chosen by God to rule. And as you've seen, people usually don't want to argue with God. But Akbar the Repetitive was open to other religious beliefs and focused on ideas of unity and tolerance in his empire, which actually is pretty great. Next, let's look at Louis XIV in France. He declared himself the Sun King, choosing this as a symbol of power to command complete loyalty from his subjects. And maybe because the Great was becoming a little cliche. Louis also built the most awesomely impressive Palace of Versailles, which is a wonderful place to take in the sun. Very fitting for the Sun King. Now let's head over to Russia, which was once ruled by an absolute monarch who, surprisingly, was not known as the Great. He was known as Ivan the Terrible. And unsurprisingly, he was ruthless and terrible. But fast forward 200 years, and we get to Peter the Great, an absolute ruler who actually earned the name by doing some truly great things. Peter westernized Russia, establishing warm water ports, and built the city of St. Petersburg. That will cover the major rulers you'll look at. But before we leave absolutism, let's remember, all great things must come to an end. And for the end, we'll look over to England. While other nations accepted absolutism, England stood in contrast. After the Puritan Revolution and the Glorious Revolution of the mid-1600s, the English Bill of Rights was passed, establishing England as a limited monarchy. And the shift from absolute to limited monarchy is a big one. This initial stand against absolutism would inspire future rulers to consider the needs of the governed. So, recall that absolute monarchs ruled with absolute and great power, but that a shift towards religious tolerance and the needs of the governed would begin moving Europe towards a more democratic future.